A line of low-grey basalt boulders sits half-submerged in the brown water of the Barwon River, just below the modern weir at Brewarrina. From the riverbank, looking out across the dry red plains of northwestern New South Wales, it resembles an ordinary rocky bar where a stream breaks into shallow riffles over stones. It is not a natural feature. The rocks form an engineered network of elliptical pens, holding ponds and directional spillways constructed to trap native fish as river levels rise and fall across 400 metres of the riverbed. What remains remarkable about the structure is not merely its survival, but that for more than a century of colonial settlement, pastoralists and surveyors dismissed the complex as a random scatter of river gravel, failing to recognise one of the oldest surviving human-built water management systems on Earth. How many of the continent's most significant ancient structures and settlements still lie hidden in plain sight beneath river silt, dense scrub, and modern bitumen? Across the continent lie 7 specific locations where the physical record of ancient occupation contradicts the long-standing assumption of a sparse, impermanent past. From a drowned stone quarry lying beneath 14 metres of seawater on the northwest shelf, to an engineered volcanic canal system in Victoria that produced commercial surpluses thousands of years before European arrival. For generations, standard Australian histories described the continent before 1788 as an untamed wilderness, where small family groups moved constantly across an unchanging landscape without altering the ground beneath their feet. That conclusion was entirely understandable to early colonial observers who were looking exclusively for masonry walls, cleared rectangular fields, and written property deeds. Because the architecture of the continent was built from volcanic basalt, living earth, and seasonal watercourses, the official record simply failed to register what was directly in front of it. That long-held assumption broke down when archaeologists began systematically applying radiocarbon dating, aerial mapping, and sediment analysis to sites preserved across the mainland and offshore waters. The physical evidence revealed permanent stone settlements, continent-wide trade routes moving heavy materials over thousands of kilometers, and technological adaptations that persisted through dramatic climatic shifts, from the peak of the last glacial maximum to the post-glacial flooding of the continental shelf. The 7th site on this list sits on the western edge of the Murray-Darling Basin, where the Barwon River cuts through the territory of the Nyampa, Murrawarri, and Pakunti peoples. It is known in the Nyampa language as Byames Nunhu, the Brewarrina fish traps. The structure consists of dry stone walls built from dark porphyry boulders, arranged in a herringbone pattern of curved pens and connecting channels. Each pen was built to function at a specific river height, allowing fish swimming upstream against the current to enter through narrow gaps that closed as the water dropped. When the river flooded, the walls directed migrating golden perch, Murray cod, and silver perch into holding pools where they could be caught by hand or kept alive until needed. When surveyor Thomas Mitchell recorded the reach in 1835, he noted the unusual arrangement of stones across the riverbed, yet European settlers subsequently dismantled sections of the stonework to build sheep washes and pastoral weirs. Despite that destruction, the core geometry of the pens remained intact. Archaeological surveys coordinated with the Brewarrina Aboriginal Cultural Museum have documented that the complex spans an area roughly 400 metres long, making it one of the largest recorded stone-walled aquaculture networks in the Southern Hemisphere. Dating river stonework directly is notoriously difficult because rushing floodwaters continually wash away organic sediments. However, archaeological excavations of stratified occupation deposits along the adjacent river terrace have recovered hearths, freshwater mussel shell middens, and stoneflake tools, confirming continuous human activity at the reach for thousands of years. The traps were not designed for a single family group. Operating the pens required coordinated management between multiple distinct language groups who gathered at the river during seasonal fish migrations under strict customary law. The survivability of the Brewarrina traps demonstrates how stone architecture could be integrated into dynamic natural river systems without destroying them. Yet it represents only one facet of how early communities engineered the continent's hydrology. The 6th site on this list shifts the focus from riverbed stonework to the deep antiquity of the arid interior. It lies in the Willandra Lakes region of southwestern New South Wales, an ancient chain of dry lake basins that once received overflow water from the Lachlan River system. Today, Lake Mungo is a dry, flat clay pan, bordered on its eastern margin by a 30-kilometre crescent of wind-blown sand and clay dunes known as a lunette. To an observer standing on the dry lake bed in midsummer, the landscape appears barren, eroded by prevailing westerly winds into sharp gullies and fragile clay pinnacles. During the late Pleistocene epoch, between 50,000 and 20,000 years ago, the hydrological balance of southeastern Australia was entirely different. Melting snow and high precipitation across the Great Dividing Range filled the Willandra system with deep, clean, fresh water, creating an interconnected lake system covering more than 1,000 square kilometres. The lake margins supported dense populations of freshwater mussels, golden perch, Murray cod, and diverse terrestrial wildlife. The lunettes flanking the eastern shores accumulated layers of fine quartz sand and pellital clay blown off the beaches, burying hearths, stone tools, and burials in distinct, chronologically ordered stratigraphic horizons. When geologists first systematically mapped the region in the late 1960s, the antiquity of human habitation in Australia was officially calculated at no more than a few thousand years. That assumption collapsed in 1968 when geologist Jim Bowler from the Australian National University noticed burnt human bone fragments eroding out of the core of the lunette at Lake Mungo. Analysis revealed the cremated remains of an adult woman, designated Mungo Lady, followed in 1974 by the discovery of an intact ochre-covered male burial, Mungo Man, within the same stratigraphic layer. Subsequent optothermally stimulated luminescence dating confirmed that both individuals lived approximately 42,000 years ago. The Mungo burials established that Australia's dry interior held the earliest anatomically modern human cremations and ritual ochre burials recorded anywhere on Earth. Because the climate shifted toward intense aridity around 18,000 years ago, the lakes dried out and the dunes ceased active growth. The dry soil sealed the deposits in place until modern pastoral clearing and wind erosion stripped the overlying sediment away. Moving from the arid interior to the temperate south, the fifth site lies in the volcanic plains of southwestern Victoria. At Budj Bim, formerly Mount Eccles, a basalt lava flow known as the Tirandara flow erupted approximately 37,000 years ago, permanently altering the drainage of the surrounding country. The molten rock poured south towards the Southern Ocean, blocking local watercourses and creating an extensive wetland complex across more than 100 square kilometers. When European settlers arrived in the 1830s, they described the stony lava country as an impassable waste of fractured basalt boulders and swamp. Beneath the dense cover of tea tree scrub and wetland reeds, the Gunditjmara people had systematically manipulated the basalt flow. They excavated channels through solid lava, constructed stone retaining walls up to a meter high, and built hundreds of holding ponds connected by timber-slotted sluice gates. The system was designed to manage the life cycle of the short-finned eel, known locally as kuyang. As winter rains flooded the marshlands, the Gunditjmara channeled the water to guide migrating eels into stone-walled pens, where woven basket traps caught them at will. By regulating water levels through manipulated swales and weirs, the Gunditjmara maintained a reliable food surplus that supported permanent stone-based settlements across the basalt landscape. The true scale of the Budj Bim aquaculture network remained largely unrecorded in official academic surveys until bushfires cleared the dense scrub in early 2020, exposing previously unmapped canals and stonehouse foundations across several square kilometres. Archaeological dating of sediments trapped behind the engineered stone weirs confirmed that components of the hydraulic system were constructed at least 6,600 years ago, predating the Egyptian pyramids. Yet, while these continental systems survived through gradual climatic shifts and volcanic events, what happened to the vast settlements established when the coastline itself sat hundreds of kilometres further out to sea? The answer to what became of those drowned coastal landscapes lies beneath the shallow tropical waters of the Pilbara coast, at the fourth site on this list. Between 20,000 and 7,000 years ago, melting global ice sheets caused sea levels to rise by more than 120 metres. Across northern Australia, the rising ocean swallowed over 2 million square kilometres of the continental shelf, submerging vast coastal plains that had been continuously occupied for tens of thousands of years. Until recently, conventional marine archaeology assumed that the high-energy surf zones of post-glacial marine transgressions would have pulverized or scattered any stone tools left on the drowned shelf. That assumption changed through the work of the Deep History of Sea Country project, led by Flinders University in collaboration with the Murujuga Aboriginal Corporation. Between 2017 and 2019, researchers deployed side-scan sonar, high-resolution multi-beam bathymetry, and sub-bottom seismic profiling across the seabed of the Dampier archipelago. The acoustic data revealed submerged river channels, drowned springs, and preserved rocky terraces lying undisturbed on the sea floor. Scientific divers, guided by the bathymetric models, targeted Cape Bruguières Channel and Flying Foam Passage. At Cape Bruguières, in water depths of up to 2.4 metres, divers recovered 269 stone artefacts, including basalt flakes, cores, and grinding stones embedded within marine calcarenite sediments. Radiocarbon dating of associated marine shell layers and sea level modeling established that the site had been occupied before sea level rose over the terrace more than 7,000 years ago. At a second location in Flying Foam Passage, researchers discovered a submerged freshwater spring cutting through the seabed at a depth of 14 meters. Divers located a single flaked stone tool made from local fine-grained. The physical record proved that drowned landforms could preserve stone tools in place beneath modern ocean currents. Turning inland from the coast to the third site, we encounter a terrestrial archive, preserved not by water, but by subterranean chemistry. Deep beneath the limestone plains of southeastern South Australia lie the Naracoorte caves. From the surface, the country appears as an ordinary series of low, scrub-covered dune ridges running parallel to the modern coast. Beneath the ground, acidic groundwater dissolved vertical karst fissures, known as pitfall traps. For more than 500,000 years, animals moving through the surface scrub tumbled into these concealed vertical openings, dropping up to 20 meters into pitch-black subterranean chambers. The bones accumulated in stratified sand cones beneath the entrances. Because the limestone environment maintained a stable, cool temperature with neutral chemistry, the bone material did not dissolve. The site remained unknown to modern paleontology until 1969, when speleologists exploring Victoria Fossil Cave squeezed through a narrow opening into a massive chamber filled with tens of thousands of fossilized skeletons. Paleontologists from Flinders University and the South Australian Museum applied electron spin resonance, uranium series dating, and optically stimulated luminescence to the sand grains surrounding the bones. The testing established that the cave deposits span multiple glacial and interglacial cycles across 500 millennia. The fossil layers preserved complete skeletons of extinct Australian megafauna: the marsupial lion Thylacoleo carnifex, the giant short-faced kangaroo Procoptodon goliah, and the 3-ton herbivore Diprotodon optatum. The Naracoorte deposits provided the first continuous, high-resolution fossil record documenting how the continent's animal communities adapted to rapid climate changes before the arrival of human hunters. Yet while limestone chambers can trap animals over hundreds of thousands of years, modern development above ground creates an entirely different risk. What happens when ancient living sites lie directly beneath active municipal streets? The second site on this list demonstrates what happens when ancient living floors remain sealed beneath a modern urban corridor. It lies directly beneath the riverside suburbs of Parramatta, 24 kilometres west of the Sydney Central Business District. To commuters walking along George Street or driving along the Great Western Highway, the area appears as a dense grid of commercial office towers, apartment blocks, and multi-storey car parks built over 19th century colonial foundations. In 2019, ahead of the construction of the 65-storey Parramatta Square development and the light rail corridor, archaeological salvage excavations were mandated along Macquarie Street. Beneath early colonial brick footings, archaeologists encountered an intact Pleistocene sand sheet that had remained sealed beneath urban construction for more than 2 centuries. Controlled manual excavation through the stratified sand recovered thousands of silcrete and quartz stone artifacts, hearth remnants, and napping floors. Optically stimulated luminescence dating, carried out on the surrounding quartz grains, confirmed that the living floor dated to between 30,000 and 35,000 years ago. The stone analysis revealed that the people occupying the Parramatta sand sheet had transported silcrete from quarries near the Hawkesbury River, 30 kilometres to the northwest. The depth and integrity of the layer proved that human occupation along the tidal reaches of the Parramatta River had survived beneath heavy 19th and 20th century urban development without being completely graded away. The presence of this ancient layer has transformed modern planning in Western Sydney. The New South Wales Heritage Act and modern municipal planning controls now require multi-million-dollar salvage excavations and continuous archaeological monitoring before deep basement excavation can proceed anywhere across the Parramatta alluvial terrace. The primary site on this list represents the most completely documented and oldest confirmed human living site on the continent, Madjedbebe, situated in the Alligator Rivers region of the Northern Territory. Madjedbebe is a sandstone rock shelter located on the edge of the Arnhem Land escarpment, within the traditional country of the Mirarr people. The shelter sits on a low sand apron, protected from seasonal monsoonal downpours beneath an overhanging sandstone cliff. Excavations led by the University of Queensland, conducted in partnership with the Gunjaimi Aboriginal Corporation, reached a depth of over 4 meters through stratified sand. The excavation recovered more than 10,000 stone artifacts, including edge-ground stone hatchets, reflective ground ochre pigments, grinding stones, and charred plant remains. Dating the deepest cultural layer required extraordinary precision. Researchers collected over 100 optically stimulated luminescence samples, analysed at the University of Adelaide and the University of Wollongong. The results, published in 2017, established with high statistical certainty that human occupation at the shelter began at least 65,000 years ago. The edge-ground hatchets found in the lowest strata represented the oldest documented polished stone cutting tools identified anywhere in the world. The evidence confirmed that the first Australians arrived on the northern coastline equipped with advanced composite tool technologies and complex grinding systems, thriving in the tropical savannas tens of thousands of years before anatomically modern humans reached Western Europe. Yet documenting these ancient sites presents modern society with a fragile balance. Once an ancient living floor or engineered system is uncovered, how does the continent protect that record from being permanently dismantled by resource development and industrial expansion? The 65,000-year sequence at Madjedbebe fundamentally anchors the chronology of the entire continent, proving that initial settlement occurred alongside sophisticated technologies that persisted through multiple ice ages and massive environmental transformations. Together, these 7 locations, from the stone fish pens of Brewarrina and the dry lunettes of Lake Mungo to the engineered lava canals of Budj Bim, the drowned quarries of the Dampier archipelago, the bone-filled karst shafts of Naracoorte, the buried sand sheet of Parramatta, and the sandstone shelter at Madjedbebe, demonstrate that the official record was never thin because the landscape was empty, but because the colonial eye looked only for monuments cut from imported stone and registered in written ledgers. What kept these ancient systems and living sites unnoticed for so long was not their obscurity, but an administrative definition of permanence that failed to recognize architecture built from living water, basalt flows, and stratified sand. Significant gaps in the continent's physical history remain open. Less than 5% of the Australian continental shelf has been surveyed with high-resolution acoustic bathymetry, leaving millions of square kilometres of drowned coastal terrain completely unexamined. Across the inland river basins and arid sandfields, uncounted hearths, stone arrangements, and occupational floors erode out of dunes every year, exposed and lost to weathering before any formal archaeological survey can record them. The published map presents a completed, modern grid of roads, towns, and cadastral boundaries, while the ground beneath it remains an ancient, largely unread archive. Which of these sites surprised you most, or is there an overlooked feature in your own state or territory that has always struck you as out of place? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden geography of the continent.